Hi, this is Geekmeister from the Geek for All show. What you're about to watch is uncensored, unscripted, and possibly unethical. We hope you enjoy the Unofficial Stoned Sesh. What is going on, people? We're back. It is the Unofficial Stoned Sesh brought to you by the Geek for All show, where me and Professor Weirdfuck get stoned and talk nerdy shit. So tonight we are going to be talking about vampires. Let's get started. He found something on YouTube by the guys from Flight of the Conchords.
No. I didn't find it on YouTube. I bought it off YouTube.
Are you okay? Where'd you find this out from?
Well, my brother had told me about it, and Eric rented it a while ago. My roommate rented it a while ago. And we watched it, and I loved it. It's a mockumentary, kind of like filmed like, just like The Office or shows like that. It's a movie of, mockumentary, a crew following around, a group of vampires leading up to a big event called the Unholy Masquerade, which is a big party event for undead ghouls.
Otherworldly evil types.
But specifically undead ones.
Yes. Although witches were there too. I don't know where you categorize them.
Yeah, I don't
know. There was mention of demons and stuff like that would potentially be violent. Anyway, point is that they what I really enjoy about this is that they really go hard into some of like the lore on stuff. Like they explore like most of the lore. Like vampires in this have pretty much all of the powers and pretty much all of the weaknesses that vampires have. Yeah. One of my favorites being they actually did the silver thing. They did the lycanthrope tie-in with the silver. Like, that was impressive. Not many people are aware that there are stories... first of all, not many people are aware that the vampire goes back to a combination of the lycanthrope and the Asian wraith. There was a merger of those stories. And so with the lycanthrope tie-in, there's a lot of stories of vampires where silver is effective against them in the way that it's effective against werewolves.
Oh, even in the Blade stories, silver.
Yep.
The sword was made of silver.
If you're familiar with Blade, you're aware of this. But some people who are more kind of on the Anne Rice or Twilight Zone, just Twilight saga type thing, which I don't know much about Twilight because vampires don't spark. We'll get back to Twilight in a little bit.
But what's cool about the movie is like it was a joke, but like it wasn't too cheesy. Like the vampire effects were actually solid effects.
Yeah, they really were.
And the whole creepy vampire aspect about the vampires too.
Well, so the way that it sets up is that there's like 4 vampires living in a flat, and they've got like your 4 totally like classic archetypal vampires. You've got like the Interview with a Vampire guy, who is like sort of like the main guy who's talking to like the film crew most of the time.
He's like they described him as the 18th century dandy.
Dandy, yes, the dandy. That sort of the Hollywood vampire a little bit. And then one of the first guys that we see is like the kind of like punk rock, rebellious vampire types, the bad boy, edgies. And then you've got, like, your classic, like, Vlad the Impaler.
Yeah.
And then you have Peter.
Peter,
who is the Nosferatu.
The oldest one, and is just the most primitive and savage vampire of it all. He doesn't say a goddamn word in the movie.
He is one of the best parts, though.
Growls and stuff and hisses and all that jazz. But, yeah. Peter's definitely the best.
Peter is fantastic. Did we announce the title? I think we're so stoned we forgot to announce the title of this thing. It's called What We Do in the Shadows.
Yes.
And
it's by the same people who did Flight of the Conchords.
Yeah. If you're familiar with their work, they were just a sketch comedy group from late
New
90s.
Zealand.
Yeah. And they They really do. The thing is, I'm not even a big fan of mockumentaries. Like, they're normally like not my thing. Like, I've seen
Really
Spinal
depends.
Tap. I really enjoy Spinal Tap for what it is and everything. I don't think I'd ever see Spinal Tap again though. Like, it's just like not my pace. I would totally watch this movie again though. There's something about this though that's like, I don't know. It's so absurd. I think in the first place for a film crew to just be following around vampires like that, just right off the bat, something about that just kind of keeps tying everything back in. Like there's something, I don't know what it is, but there's something there that is just really, really entertaining.
But basically, this movie just kind of kickstarted the thinking about vampires things and wanting to talk about vampires. Because let's face it, it's a big staple in the horror, sci-fi, fantasy genre.
Yes,
Mythical creatures and shit like that. But yeah, we were going to talk about what we do in the shadows, and then what else were we going to talk about?
Well, I guess just vampires in general. I mean, there's a lot to go on with vampires.
Okay.
Like,
well,
so
when you hear vampire, what's the first thing that pops in your head? What's the first thing? What vampire is your go-to vampire?
My go-to vampire. See, this is hard. This has been tainted because the truly my go-to vampire is gonna be Dracula, like most people's is. But it's been tainted over the years because after I got out of high school, because I didn't watch it while it was on, but after high school, I really got into Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So Spike is sort of my go-to on that now because I fucking love Spike. But Dracula is the classic for me in a lot of ways.
Well, no, which Dracula are you talking about? Are you talking about
Bela
Lugosi or the Bram Stoker's movie Dracula with Gary Oldman as the old one?
No. Definitely the classic Hollywood.
Bela Lugosi.
Yeah, Bela Lugosi. Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's just kind of like what comes to mind right away. But what comes to mind for me right away with vampires is definitely like the mind effect and the control aspects, which is interesting because like I said, like I really got into like Buffy, and one of the weirdest things about that show is that not all vampires actually have like that thrall power, which is really kind of odd. It's like actually like a specialty if some people like have it. But it's sort of one of like the main characteristics because there's something seductive about a vampire like right from the bat. There's something kind of inbred there with like the incubi succubi sort of lore, the beckoning to your inner desires and stuff. I mean, which is it's just kind of one of the faces of like what those classic horror monsters are, is like the man versus animal thing, and this in vampires are always sort of the sexualized version,
right?
Of it.
Well, and the thing about vampires too, like. It's funny how you bring up sexualized, because I remember also, like, I was in a book I need to finish called The Last Werewolf. There's a whole, they talk about the difference between vampires and werewolves, and our narrator is a werewolf, but he's quoting this big, long, like, essay, like, written by a vampire explaining the differences between the two. And at the very end of it, the werewolf says, and it's all written very elegantly like a vampire, like, a classy vampire type person.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, the narrator's just like, so basically, werewolves can fuck and they can't. Because in that depiction, they are corpses. They are walking corpses, pretty much. So...
Yeah, which is interesting, because... well, that's sort of the like kind of gets into like like the carnal part of sex versus like sort of like the intimacy and like the sort of more romanticized nature of it and everything. Right. Which I think vampires more traditionally represent like that romanticized, that intimacy, that closeness that is not necessarily the act of sex, but like that sexual closeness and that sexual lure and and so I think that kind of like works. I think that, there's plenty of stories where they actually are lovers and can fuck passionately.
Yeah.
But I kind of do like that though. That's hilarious that like one of the most sexualized beings actually can't get it up.
Yeah.
Like that. Oh, yeah. That to me is like really funny. Although it sort of makes me wonder like what. In that world, like what the women are like, and like, are they still getting off on anything whatsoever, or like
being dry?
Yeah. Ooh. Ooh. Yeah, I mean, probably. Although I don't know,
Leave in the
corpses can be squishy, can't they?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe leave in the comments. What do you think? Can vampires have sex?
I mean, there's plenty of examples. It depends on like which vampire. Is it? You know what? Here's the question: is it more interesting if they can't?
Yeah.
Or is that something that's just boring because of, again, the sexual ties in with vampires?
Yeah. It's a big thing.
Now, one of the other things that's interesting is the whole transformation that's always, gone back and forth between vampires and stuff. Like, okay, so for some, there's just kind of like a permanent fixture that's sort of halfway between beast, halfway between man type of thing.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of like the most common. Like, they look human for the most part, but as soon as like they open their, mouth, like, they've got like crazy teeth going on, or at least like, fangs or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
But then there's some where like they really do look human most of the time, like completely, until like like one very small change happens, or like there's like a big old like beast bug out type of situation.
Oh, yeah. There are different types, yeah, and different variations of what people depict about it. My favorite variation is, well, I mean, all right. I really wanted to like the Bram Stoker's Dracula movie because it was Gary Oldman and it was visually done well. There are certain points in that movie that's just so fucking awesome.
It's creepy. It's creepy as shit. It's
creepy.
super off-putting. Like there's just like slow movements where you're just like, oh.
And that's the kind of vibe I want to get from vampires. Like
they shouldn't be pop-out scary.
No, it should just be a subtle, like, wait, that's something that should not normally happen in real life. How did you do that? Like, vampires are, like, in my opinion, they're tricksters, too, but in a very creepy way.
Yeah, they're not low-key tricksters. Trickster is almost kind of too playful, but they're manipulators.
Yeah.
They like to have control over the situation.
Yeah. But I mean, that whole creepy essence of the vampire, like where it's like the power is like you gotta like it like emptied out my head and like made me rethink vampires altogether, because when people typically think vampires, they think blood sucking, undead, turn into a bat, and not a lot of like of their powers. But what people don't understand is that vampires aren't just like half bat people or stuff like that.
Yeah, no, that's like an anthropomorphic type of situation going on.
And they can turn into other things besides vampires. Besides bats. I'm sorry, besides bats. Like, they can turn into wolves, they can turn into cats, they can...
Again, the lycanthrope connection.
Yeah, exactly. But like they can also do many other things, like seem invisible in the mist. And,
right. Or actually transform into particle.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's another one too. Yeah, there are so many things that a vampire can do. It's like it's just pretty much a dark, like demonic creature.
In fact, actually, one of my going back to Buffy the Vampire Slayer, one of my favorite things is they actually brought Dracula in, and one of his things is that, like, unlike other vampires, he did have like all of like the voodoo powers and stuff. But Spike pointed out that it was gypsy tricks and stuff. But gypsies have already been shown to be like very powerful in that world. So the whole thing was that before he became a vampire, or maybe while he was a vampire, he learned all these interesting tricks. One of them being he could turn into like dust or mist and just like float away and then rematerialize as he pleased. So he couldn't be killed. You would stake him, he'd turn into dust, but he could already do that. And so he could reassemble himself.
Jesus.
It was really because it was always the thing of like, Dracula always returns, like they always, which is more of a Hollywood, turn on it than anything else. But I really always liked the way that they did that they actually kind of tied in like this, metaphysical thing to like that story element.
Right.
Anyway, side tangent entirely from your point there. But what were you?
We're just talking about like how we view vampires, like
it was about the fact that they were manipulators.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that was why I thought of that.
But like also like they have like manipulators is a great way, and it's just like when you think about like how much powers that they can at all their abilities they can actually do, like you can't think of it as something as like simplistic as Hollywood vampires make it out to be.
Yeah,
You know?
I mean, they
They're
are
straight up
utility
monsters.
casters.
Yeah.
They're like hardcore utility casters.
Yeah.
Like mega utility. Like, man, they got barred up the ass.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, they really do come to think of it. Like, just on that note, like, just like thinking about it, like, bards, super utility, kind of about like boosting charisma in the right places and manipulating the situation. And bards are fucking vampires. Bards are vampires. We're calling it right here.
They can be.
Or they can be, at least. I don't know.
But anyway, also, so while we're on the subject of vampires, we should probably talk about supposed vampire news. Now, again, this is not necessarily. This is just something I heard. We'll just talk about it. It's the Unofficial Stoned Sesh, so it doesn't really matter about continuity here. We're telling you straight up, we don't know exactly what's going on.
Whatever,
but
you heard a rumor, share it.
I heard that they're doing a reboot for the Interview with the Vampire, Vampire Lestat.
Oh, I actually did hear something about that. I wasn't, you see, that's the thing. I've been hearing sequel, I've been hearing reboot, I have been hearing, like, prequel. All I've been hearing, the only thing that remains consistent on that, and it's still all rumors, nothing's I've been confirmed from anybody official on this, but it does seem like there's enough rumors out there that, like, another one of some kind might be in the mix.
Maybe. I don't know, because Anne Rice, like, I think, didn't she go Christian? I think she went Christian.
I don't know, but I mean...
And she doesn't even talk about those books anymore.
I mean, that's true, but I mean, there's just enough source material there still to, like, construct, like, other parts of the world, you know what I mean?
Right. That's
like,
true.
they don't need her, necessarily, to be able to put all that together.
That's true. I think a reboot would be in order, though. I mean, because they kind of, like, Interview with the Vampire was good. The first half of it was good. And the second half just seemed like goth porn.
It was poorly paced. I think that was the biggest problem with it. The pacing of that film was just... It could have... There were moments... I think overall it could have picked up.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. It was an interview. They wanted to really, like, build it and everything. And an Anne Rice novel isn't, like, over the top. It has a slow kind of pace to it.
Mm-hmm.
But still, I feel like they could have upped that a little bit, and then actually, like, in certain parts, slowed it down. Like, there are certain moments that, like, could have actually taken... But anyway,
But, also, I mean, have you seen Queen of the Damned?
Oh, God. I saw that once when it came out.
You know, I finally saw it for the first time ever in my life,
Mm-hmm.
like, not that long ago, and honestly, it wasn't that bad of a movie. Like, the effects they do for the vampire, like, that's my biggest thing. What's gonna make me kind of enjoy it is, like, the effects they do with the vampire, and if they have that sense of eerie creepiness that I need in a vampire, then I'm gonna like it. Like, at least like that aspect of it. Granted, Korn did the whole soundtrack for the movie.
See, I remember there was something about that movie that I liked.
And also, who was it? That one hip-hop artist who died right before the movie was released.
Oh.
Aaliyah.
Yeah.
And she was good. She was really good. She is this very, like, Egyptian-esque vampire and just... She just has this way about her of, like, she's like, the world is her, like, toy bin. She is so powerful, she can't be stopped. She's just gonna do whatever the fuck she wants.
I mean, that is very vampire-esque.
Mm-hmm.
Although, because I don't remember, she kind of, like, let that sort of... She was sort of ultimately foiled by her own baton on that one, right?
Oh, well...
I just remember, it's been so long since I've seen that movie, I don't remember.
Well, I mean... That's like, she almost pretty much takes over, then the other vampires decide, nah, she's gotta go.
Right. See, that's the thing, like, the one thing is, like, I like vampires that, like, have that, like, the world is my oyster and I shall toy with it as I please. Like, a good portion of that is really important, but I think it's best when it's also coupled with a certain wisdom.
Yes.
And I feel like, and again, it's so long since I've seen that movie, but I remember thinking that it was kind of like, she's gonna get herself in trouble. She's making a lot of assumptions here about like who's not going to screw with her.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
And I mean, which I is like the plot point. But for me, like that to me is the ultimate scary vampire. Is the guy who has seen people fall who were powerful and has learned from it and is like cunning and vicious and does like to toy with the world in his own way, but knows exactly how to play his cards. Like that for me is like the quintessential like master vampire right there.
Right.
I'm trying to like I mean Dracula obviously comes to mind. Like somebody who does not underestimate his enemies. Even though when in the stories where Van Helsing does in fact get him in the end and everything, it wasn't because he was underestimating him. It was just Van Helsing really did have higher powers on his side.
Yeah.
Usually in those stories, like he happened to find things at the right time, but Dracula was being very careful and watched him and knew that like, ooh, this one must be watched. She's on to me, like right from the. And I think that is what makes Dracula like kind of like the king. He like his years of wisdom show along with his thirst to do as he pleases and hold the world for ransom.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. So whether that reboot comes out or not, we'll see.
We'll see about that. Want to trust Twilight for a minute?
Do we have? Okay. All right. We'll talk about Twilight. I cannot talk too much about it because I've only seen clips of the movies. Haven't seen the whole movies. Haven't sat down and watched them. And no, I am not gonna I'm not gonna watch them because I already have an opinion on them. I'm not gonna like them. I'm not gonna like them.
The people who like those movies and books don't even really like them. That's the thing.
They just got consumed in it, and it's like, well, I better finish. I gotta finish it.
From what I understand of it, is that the world that actually surrounds the story going on is actually very interesting, but the story itself sucks, like beyond measure. Essentially, because it's a stupid teenage love story. Here's my spiel on the whole. Okay,
finger blast material.
Yes. All right, sparkling vampires. Let's just talk sparkling vampires.
No, you can't get on. You like okay. They're okay. Okay. This is one thing I will say. Aside from the sparkling thing, vampires being around and able to go out in the daylight. Yes, the whole vampire getting burned by sun only came in during when Nosferatu was made, because they just liked the effect. They thought it was a cool effect, and that's how sunlight killing vampires
became actually a thing, yeah.
But so one thing Twilight did, yeah, a vampire can go around in the daylight, but they sparkle.
Yes, that made no sense to me.
Do you know these stories like at all? How well are you versed in this?
I don't know. No. The sparkle thing. And that's the thing. They avoid direct sunlight because of the fact that they sparkle. And here's the thing: even early vampires, like the Nosferatu thing, yes, but even early vampires avoided the sunlight.
Mm-hmm.
Like it didn't kill them. It didn't like burst them into flames, but they preferred the darkness.
Right.
Like that was like the whole thing, is that they like hunted at night, and it was like just sort of like more efficient for them and stuff. And that's actually really important, because if vampires are able to just sort of like play in the daylight and everything completely unscathed, they'd sort of be running the world, I would think.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing too is that like even at least before like sunlight did affect them and stuff, you at least had like holy symbolage that could like work against them, which doesn't really exist in the Twilight world.
Mm-hmm.
They're sort of just sparkle monsters.
Yeah.
Which I don't understand, but they avoid the sunlight because the sparkle will give them away, and then people might fuck with them or whatever. But it's like, wouldn't have people started worshiping them? Like let's just think about thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
Wouldn't people worship people who sparkled and feasted upon others? Like, they already sacrificed gods, like, the people to gods they couldn't see. Like, thousands of years ago. Think this through. Like, why, in that universe, why would sparkle vampires not be worshipped as kings and rule the world?
There's so many problems with Twilight.
There's a lot of problems.
Like, I mean, okay, so let's just end that discussion here.
Yeah. We did, all right. I just wanted to make fun of it for a little bit.
That sucks. Okay.
All right.
Bad vampire story. We're not even going to talk about the werewolf aspect of it.
I don't know enough about the werewolf aspect of it.
They don't like to keep their shirts on. Yeah. I mean, there are even people out there that think vampires are a real thing.
Yeah, those are an interesting group of folks.
So, if anyone has, like, any cool stories they find out there of, like, not, like, joke articles or shit like that, people that actually believe this shit.
They do exist, and...
we want those links.
Yeah.
Hook it up.
We might actually, if we find some, we might actually
post
post
some. We'll post some. Why not?
Yeah. But, so I think that's the ultimate thing, is that vampires are... creepy,
Eerie.
sexual, and always in control of the situation. And that's sort of, that's their trademarks.
Yeah, definitely check out What We Do in the Shadows. If you haven't seen Interview with the Vampire or Queen of the Damned, give them a go. Why not? It's a good vampire story, kind of. But yeah. And if you have any good vampire movie suggestions for us, please leave them in the comments. Of course, we've seen Lost Boys.
Also, real quick, the Geek for All show. Now here's the
announcement.
Thing. We're going to be theoretically recording this week. Now there might be some errors as we try to get like this first video together. We're going to be doing it with like some real microphones, so it isn't as bullshitty as this.
Yeah, this is kind of janky, but that's why we just get stoned and talk about stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah, we assure you, if you are just tuning into this and seeing this type of stuff, our podcast is way better. We're a lot more lively. We're definitely more on point. We actually put stuff together. We just get stoned and talk about stuff. We barely prepare.
Yeah. But that is going to be coming back either next week on Tuesday, or we're going to be doing it the week after that, depending on how things go for the first one. But we're hopefully going to be bringing those to you at least once a month, if not twice a month on Tuesdays, changing out with this thing.
Mm-hmm.
We're hopefully going to, after that, be bringing in some other segments. We've talked about doing like some science segments and
Professor Weird Fuck around.
Yeah, hopefully going to be hooking that up. I think I'm going to be doing a music thing potentially as well. I think we were talking about. Anyway, we got some ideas in the works.
Yeah.
We'll be letting you know about that. Anyway, but until then, you guys have yourselves a good one. Peace out.
Bye.